Hey everyone, and welcome to another Game Explained discussion. I'm your host, Derek Bittner, and I'm joined today by Ash Paulson to reflect on everything non-Nintendo in 2016, hence why Andre isn't here. So let's take a look back at the games we played this year and a lot of the major news stories covering those games. So how'd this release year look to you, Ash?
Absolutely, utterly packed. I mean, 2016 was such an amazing year for gaming, and really the clearest evidence of that is just the long list of games that I either wanted to play or still want to play or started playing and didn't get to finish. And I mean, my list of finished games in 2016 is pretty decently sized, but my list of games that I wanted to play in 2016 and couldn't get around to is so much bigger. And it's a testament to how great gaming still is in 2016.
Yeah, I'd say it was a pretty good year. There was always something to play. I think the beginning of the year was a little slow, but once April and so forth hit, then stuff started being released. It started getting really interesting, and a lot of big titles came out this year that turned out really well, which is good because it seemed like a lot of, like when we got to E3, there was a lot of games that got pushed to 2017.
Right.
It's just good to see that we still had a pretty decent year and finally got some games that were in the pipeline for a long time finally released. Who knew?
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and just break down these games. What game, I have to assume the game that stood out the most to you this year was Final Fantasy 15.
In one way, yes. I mean, that's one of the two games I think stood out to me. But I knew that game was going to stand out to me. So because of, obviously I'm a big Final Fantasy fan, its story development history. But of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention how much Bravely Second stood out to me as a surprise. Because it ended up being my game of the year, and I did nothing but live and breathe Bravely Second for like a month or a month and a half because it was just that good. But yeah, I mean, Final Fantasy 15 was obviously the big overarching story of the year for me, just because, after 10 years, this game finally came out, and perhaps not in the form that some fans were expecting after all the Versus 13 stuff, but obviously I've talked about it before in other discussions, but I'm still very happy with how 15 turned out, despite its problems. I mean, obviously it's a long wait. There are some disappointments, but I'm still very happy with how the game turned out, and I'm still playing it. I mean, I still played it for hours last night. I'm on my break, so I've been getting some post-game time in with FF15.
Nice. And just on that aspect, because I really have nothing much more to say about 15 other than what I've already said, and the fact that I've not had as much time to play it as you, obviously, but what I've played does seem enjoyable, if very different. Do you think that last delay from September to November affected it at all, or do you think it worked out for the better?
Absolutely. From what I understand, that last delay, if you go back and compare footage from before the delay announcement to after it, it's like night and day. I really do think that final 2 months gave them the little bit of extra time they needed to really get the retail version of the game running optimally. So, yeah, I mean, if you go back and check before and after, you can definitely see that the game went through a series of, major optimizations that it hadn't prior to that delay. So, obviously getting that last 2 months of delay time, especially after they held that whole press event specifically to release the original release date, there was definitely a disappointment, and it was hard not to really question Square and what they were doing at that point. But I mean, that last 2 months really helped, and, obviously the game needed it, because even though, it came out in its finished state, there's still so much missing from that game, and you can tell that it was obviously, parts of it had to be cobbled together from stuff that was cut out. So, I think even with that last 2 months, I'm sure Tabata and the rest of the team are thinking, wow, I wish we'd had another year to work on this game, because, as awesome as it is, it's clearly not 100% what the developers intended it to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was just the effects of a long development cycle, and I'm sure the story behind that game is fascinating, and what happened to Versus 13, what happened that they eventually decided to change it to 15.
I think what happened was that Nomura was just taking way too long. It was kind of like a Kojima situation where he had been sitting on this game for like 4 years, but nothing materialized. And finally, I think Square is like, okay, we're booting you onto Kingdom Hearts 3. You need to make that game and get it out the door, and we're going to get someone who's actually going to finish Versus 13 to turn it into 15 and actually finish this game.
Yeah, that would make sense. But there was an interesting side effect, and I think that actually the delay in 15 probably helped World of Final Fantasy immensely. All of a sudden, that game got a lot more attention, I feel, because, hey, we still have another Final Fantasy to enjoy, and it's here in October, so we can actually squeeze this game in before Final Fantasy 15 arrives, and it's much more of a classic experience, especially with all the returning characters and creatures and situations.
Yeah.
I think that delay of 15 really did help World of Final Fantasy.
I think so too, because I think World of Final Fantasy was already going to have at least a little more trouble, well, a lot more trouble standing out, just because it's, for better and worse, a traditional turn-based RPG on consoles in 2016, which I love, but I don't think necessarily a lot of people were, clamoring for. So I think had it come out after 15, it might not have stood a chance. So I agree with you. I think that delay really helped World of Final Fantasy, and that's another one of those games I need to go back and finish. Like, I put so much time into it, but I wasn't able to finish it before 15 came out, so then I never finished it.
What kind of fan are you?
I know, I need more time. We all need more time, right?
Yeah, we really do. We need an 8th day of the week so we can actually rest.
Yeah, that's true. Well, who needs just more gaming? Who needs rest?
Oh, that too.
Yeah.
But no, it was very interesting to me how World of Final Fantasy was always kind of one of those background games throughout the year, and then as soon as that 15 delay happened, all of a sudden everybody was talking about World of Final Fantasy, and that was coming up. And I've seen mostly positive opinions of it. The biggest criticisms I've seen is the main character and Tama's voice tick.
Yeah, which, I guess you have to like a certain kind of voice work to be into that. I mean, I obviously love anime, and I don't really mind high-pitched anime voices, so Tama never... Actually, I fell in love with Tama instantly, and then Rain and Lan, I hear there's some kind of plot twist at the end that makes you really hate them, but so far, I like them. I mean, obviously, they're a little tropey, but, maybe the stuff with Lan gets a little uncomfortable because they really go hard on, making him seem and look really stupid. But,
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, it's a typical anime dub, but it's a well-done anime dub, and I think it's fun. It's whimsical, it's fun, and yes, Tama has an annoying speech tick, but it's only annoying if you think it's annoying. If it's cute and it's endearing, then it's cute and endearing.
You just gotta have that.
It's all in your attitude, man. Yeah, it's all in your mindset.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes that just rubs people the wrong way, and I can understand that. I mean, I've picked up the game. I have not had time to sit down and play it, but I'm interested because I like the core concept, and seeing all the references to the classic games is always interesting and fun, and especially when it's getting such a positive viewpoint on the whole. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, maybe I should work Tama's speech pattern into my speaking on podcasts and discussions just subtly, so you can just so it creeps up on you naturally, and you don't notice I'm doing it.
You're fired, Ash.
And then suddenly then I'm doing it all the time.
Yeah, no. Alright, well, another game that actually took a long time to come out and finally did this year, The Last Guardian. And wow, have you got a chance to play it at all yet?
Sadly, no. Yet again, just a 2016 casualty. I just have not had time.
That's one I had a friend come over and visit, and we took the time to sit down and really play through it. It's only about an 8 to 10 hour game, depending on how much trouble you have. And I've talked about it on the podcast before, not really in a proper discussion. But my basic thoughts on it are, it really feels like a true sequel to Eco, except instead of guiding around a girl, you're guiding around a animal, the Trico. And
right.
The problem, I think, that comes with that is that you're looking for a more modern take on it, and this still feels like a product of that time, of that
generation.
Yeah, of when Eco and Shadow of the Colossus came out. The controls are very loose. It feels very much like those games, which is fine to have that feel. But oftentimes, I'll try to be climbing on Trico because you got to use him as kind of a platform to reach higher places. You'll get turned around and get stuck on his legs and just have climbing issues that I don't remember having quite as much in Shadow of the Colossus. And I don't know. The storyline is also good, but I don't think it's as strong as those previous games either. I think it's kind of standard in a weird way, where it still gets you invested, and I wanted to see what was going to happen, but nothing changed in any real way that made me really endeared. There were some interesting plot twists and some stuff that got me going, oh, damn. And it gets kind of brutal at the end. But when I looked at it in the whole, it's like, oh, this is kind of basic, honestly. It really is kind of like almost a boy and his dog's narrative with some twists and turns here and there.
That's actually the first time I've heard that complaint about the story. I've heard the gameplay complaints quite a bit, but that's the first time you've mentioned that about the story, and really the first time I've heard that. Maybe
it's just me, but I don't know. It's one of those games where I enjoyed it, but I don't see myself returning to it at all.
I could see that being the case. I mean, I want to play it, but I'm not in any major rush. So, and I guess that's kind of just because, I don't know, somewhere along the way, my hype just kind of died for The Last Guardian. It's not that I don't want to play it or that I don't care about it. It's just it's not at the forefront of my mind anymore. And I guess that'll happen after such a protracted development if you're not already, a hardcore fan of something like I am Final Fantasy. So it's like, yeah, I want to play it, but I do feel like game design has advanced beyond what Ico and Shadow of the Colossus were at the times they were released. Obviously, they were amazing at the times they were released, but it does seem like game design has kind of evolved beyond what those games are, while The Last Guardian was in development for 10 years, or almost 10 years. So, yeah, it just seems like it's kind of a case of this game taking so long to come out and being on two systems now, PS3 and PS4. I mean, it began life as a PS3 game. I just think it's been so long that maybe game design kind of moved on without it. Yeah. Not to say that it has no redeeming qualities, but that seems to be the common complaint, is that it feels last gen.
I still think people can get some genuine enjoyment out of the game. There are some very memorable moments in it, but I don't know, it didn't fully click with me, and that's interesting to say the least.
Well, what you're saying actually reminds me a lot of another game on our list, and that is Inside. And I wanted to bring that up just because that's another example of a game that was obviously not in development forever, but critically acclaimed across the board. People loved it. It's making Game of the Year lists left and right, it seems, or at least it's getting honorable mentions, and I didn't feel it. I'm not feeling it. I didn't feel it. I don't know what the big deal about this game is, and I say that as someone who enjoyed Playdead's last effort, which was Limbo. Really cool game. But Inside, I just felt like was kind of Limbo 2, which was, it's fine, but it was just, it wasn't as interesting as Limbo. Like, it went through all the same paces and did all the same things as Limbo, but didn't have as interesting a twist or, I guess, overarching story to tie it all together. So, by the time the credits rolled and I had seen Inside's big twist and I'd kind of had a little time to gestate on it, I'm like, well, okay. So that happened, and well, what am I? Okay, yeah. Cool. And I looked up the theories, and I'm like, okay, so that was cool, but kind of basic.
I mean, I've not played it myself, but I did end up watching a playthrough of it, specifically the Game Grumps version, which honestly is probably not the best way to experience that game.
Yeah.
But I still feel like I got the overall feeling of it. I don't know if it would be different if I had played through it myself. Maybe not, considering your take on it, because I generally agree with that, where it looked interesting and had moments where that were kind of cool, but I don't think the story, like, I feel like Limbo explained more of itself, maybe because it was much more fantasy-ish, because of the art style and the fact that there was this giant spider that you had to deal with, and also kind of this just creepy vibe to it. And this one went more realistic, and like, you had this boy that showed up, avoid these kind of government workers, get to this science-y area, do more. I don't want to spoil anything for it, obviously.
Right.
Get to that twist, and I'm like, okay, what's going on there? Explain that to me.
Yeah.
This is not a twist. It's not a twist almost, because it doesn't explain anything that makes it a twist. All of a sudden, you're just this, and it does give you all of a sudden this big power fantasy, I think, which is also why people might like it so much, because the gameplay twists completely, and all of a sudden you're the one in power, and you're still doing puzzles and stuff, but you're working your way through it. But then you get to the end, and it just kind of peters out.
Like, for me, I think once the shock value of that major twist that you were talking about, that shift in the balance of power, once that changes, it's like, or I guess once the shock value of that change wears off, it's like, okay, so what now? and there was nothing else ever really came. And I think that's kind of what you said, Derek. It doesn't really explain itself as well as Limbo did. And I mean, to tie it all back into what we were talking about with 15 earlier, Final Fantasy 15 had that same problem. It drops all these late game plot twists on you, or a few, but it doesn't properly explain them, so the twist falls flat, which is what happened in Inside. Like, plot twists are cool, but they have to land properly. They have to be explained, you know? They can't just happen, and they're cool just for the sake that they happen. They have to make sense within the narrative.
Yeah, and for me, I was left looking at this game and thinking, I had in my thoughts, and I was like, what was the point?
Yeah.
And I could kind of see that with Danny was the one playing it in Game Grumps, and you could kind of sense that he was like that as well. It's like, really? He's like, really? That's it? When it ended?
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't know why people just love this game across the board. I thought it kind of fell kind of flat, to be honest.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't want to base my entire opinion on that playthrough or anything like that, but I can just say I can see where you're coming from with those opinions. Another game that took a long time to come out, and I did take the chance to play it, was Owlboy. That game is so freaking gorgeous. That stands out the most. Like, this is another game that I think it took 10 years for it to finally come out. Got a bunch of accolades. People really seem to enjoy it. And I had fun with it. I don't think it's quite worthy of all the accolades, kind of like with you with Inside. Like, I had a lot of fun there, and I can totally see somebody really getting into it, but also was like, it's good. It's very good. I enjoyed it, but I also, maybe because it was hyped up so much for me, that might have affected me in some way. But when I was playing it, I was really getting into it. I thought the gameplay concepts were interesting, and there's plenty to explore and do it, all that. But I also, like, when I got to it, I was like, that was very good. But I don't know if it was as amazing as everybody else. I think the graphics are. Certainly. This is some of the most stylish pixel art I've ever seen. It just animates so well. And the music is excellent as in addition. But as far as gameplay, I was like, no, that was very good. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just being contrarian at that point.
Well, but also not everything has to be amazing, too. I mean, a game can just be very good, and that's also fine.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I heard kind of the same thing. I feel like there was a lot of hype surrounding Owlboy when it was about to come out, and then I feel like that hype died somewhat quickly. But, of course, I haven't played it, so I've had it recommended to me by several people, and it does seem like the kind of game I would like.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I just, I don't play games on Steam, so a lot of that library is kind of lost on me, because I'm really only playing on consoles, and so, of course, I'm a bit limited then. In terms of all these great games on Steam that I end up missing.
I could definitely see you still enjoying it. It's definitely good. And I don't know if it'll get ported anywhere or anything like that. But it is interesting how Owlboy came out, and I haven't really checked a lot of best of years yet list. I don't know. I'm not sure if it maintained that hype once it did release. Another one, that came out this year that you would almost expect to be on a bunch of best of years release, Uncharted 4. I don't know if I've seen that around a lot either. Again, I haven't checked a lot of these lists. Have you?
Yeah, I've seen it on a few. I haven't gone around and checked like all the lists like I often do. I've seen it on quite a few. I've seen Uncharted 4 and Overwatch get quite a few nominations or awards. And I don't, I have a weird relationship with that game. Like, I liked it a lot. Like, and I actually just went back and played a bit of it on my parents' new 4K TV just to see what 4K looks like in Uncharted 4. I mean, it's a great game. I liked it. I don't know about that ending, man. I don't know about Sam. I don't know about that ending. Like, I liked so many parts of Uncharted 4, and I loved everything. Anytime Nate and Elena were the only ones on screen, I loved it. Uncharted 4, I almost feel was more Elena's story than anything, and I think it was better for it. But, I don't know, some of the stuff surrounding Nate and Elena, again, like Sam, and this big pirate story that was pretty cool, but I feel like didn't quite match up with all the marketing that the game was getting. Like, all the marketing and the pre-hype was dark, and this is Drake's last adventure, A Thief's End, and then you play the game, and it's like, okay, I don't want to, like, spoil anything, but I don't feel like that darkness really plays out in any way.
Not really. It definitely set a darker tone than it actually was. Like, it still had the same tone to me as the previous games.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I was going in expecting something different. Because I didn't get that, I think it kind of colored my overall opinion of the game, but not such that I hated it. I just got something very different from what I think fans were led to believe we were getting.
One of the things I noticed was when I first played it, I enjoyed it because it was, new, interesting, fun to get through.
Right.
I was invested, and I got to this certain point where I was like, oh, I have to be nearing the end at this point, and I just kept playing, and by the time I finally finished the game, it was 5 a.m. So
Right.
I was obviously invested in the game, and I enjoyed the game. But one of the things I often do is when a certain friend visits, he loves watching the Uncharted games, watch me play them. And I tried doing that for this one, and he got bored.
And that doesn't surprise me.
And the thing is, I got a little bored as well, because a lot of Uncharted, like the first time through, it's amazing walking through, exploring everything, checking this stuff out. And then like you get these big open areas where you want to look around and do all this stuff. And then, it's just so slow paced. And then, as Andres mentioned during our Best of the Year discussion, the big action beats are actually pretty few and far between.
I think that's really a problem with Uncharted 4. I don't think it's particularly well paced, and I think that they overall, when all is said and done, the level of action from the first 3 games has really been ratcheted down. So you're really looking at this game that is some action, but really more about quieter moments and about the this walking simulator kind of, I guess, insult that people have started levying at the game, which isn't entirely unfair. I appreciate what games like Uncharted 4 can be and do, and I appreciate those quieter moments where you're just walking and you can't run, like you have to walk.
It took a lot of elements from The Last of Us, which may be a product of those developers working, like those directors working on Uncharted 4, which works in Last of Us. I love those moments. I don't have, for whatever reason, I don't have as much of a problem going at that pace in The Last of Us, but the game's also built around that pace. It earns that pace. Uncharted, you're not used to this pace, and if it was going for that darker storyline, maybe, but no, it's the same kind of fun-loving thing that it always was. It's just for whatever reason, you're walking around a lot more now.
I feel like Uncharted 4 was, its tone and its gameplay direction were kind of mismatched at times. If they wanted to give us a darker story, that's fine, and the gameplay could match up with that way by giving us all these quieter moments, but they didn't. They married The Last of Us's slower gameplay with a darker story in Uncharted 4 that isn't actually a darker story, and really just ends up feeling like Uncharted 1 through 3, but it doesn't have the gameplay to back that up. So it ends up feeling like this really weirdly uneven Uncharted game, I guess is what it is. Even though it's still great.
Yeah, I'm not
enjoyed
knocking it. I still had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. But I don't think it, at first I thought it was my favorite after 2. Now I almost wonder if I'd put it, go as far as my favorites of the Uncharted series go 2, 3, 4, 1.
Interesting. I could see that. I don't know. Thinking back on 3, I feel like so much of that just didn't work because, at the very least, even though 4, even though it has its problems, I will say even at least Rafe and Nadine are
true.
Well, Rafe more so than Nadine. Nadine kind of peters out and that kind of sucks, but she's getting her own game. Rafe was a great villain, and so much better than Talbot or whatever her stupid name was, Helen Mirren. I can't. Yeah. It's they sucked.
And 4 also retroactively makes certain aspects of the previous games better. As far as storylines, so it's a hard one to do. I like the action of 3 better, but I think the storyline works better in 4. It's one of those weird things based on your mood. But I'll tell you what, a game that has plenty of action the entire way through, Doom.
Yeah, you've been talking about Doom a lot.
I've not played through the entire game. I played through maybe the first 5 levels or so, and my problem is, the thing is, I've really enjoyed it, and I actually went for the harder difficulty because, it's just one of those games that feels like, yeah, I should really take this on and kick some demon ass and all that stuff and play through this, and I've had a lot of fun with it, but the problem is, I'm also playing it as if I would play any other game where I'm really exploring, trying to find all the secrets, because there's just all this upgrade stuff to make your character even better, and as I was playing through, I was also getting a little tired of it, where I was getting a little worn down. It's where's the action? And I realized I can't play this, at least my first time through, like any other game. I need to be going balls out all the time to keep up that keep up that adrenaline rush that the game totally gives you. And once you do, the game totally clicks. And the thing is, you can still totally play it like a normal game, and it actually has some those typical elements. But when you get into the pure action, man, is it fun.
I believe you. I haven't played Doom at all. I actually have the demo downloaded on my Xbox One, so I do want to check it out. You know me, and shooters don't typically get along, but I've heard so many great things about this one that I feel like, especially against all odds, like it seemed like Doom was not something that a lot of people were expecting to be any good, because Doom 3 wasn't all that well received. So I think people were kind of expecting, it's not going to be a great reboot, but then it ended up being awesome. So yeah, I want to check it out, at least just to see how it compares to the original Doom, just because, even though I'm not into shooters, I obviously am very aware of how important Doom and the first-person shooter genre are to gaming in general. So I'd like to play it just to have that kind of touchstone of knowing how it compares to the original Doom.
Yeah, I definitely classify the game as just like a pure adrenaline rush.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
Like, I mean, sometimes that's all you want. Just a couple months ago or whatever, I rented Call of Duty Infinite Warfare from Redbox. And I played through the first few levels of the campaign because, hey, it's a great-looking game that it's just an adrenaline rush. And there's, sometimes it's really all you want.
Exactly. It's different moods and whatnot. You don't always want the slow-paced stuff or the thoughtful stuff. Sometimes you just want to shoot a demon in the face and rip out his spine or something like that.
Exactly, and that's totally cool.
But another game it was not on my radar at all. Didn't really think about it much, but then it slowly started creeping into my attention, and I was like, I think I want to try this out, and that was Overwatch. And I haven't had a chance to really play it recently because it's just so hard to maintain something while we're doing this job.
Right, I know.
But when I was playing it, I was having a ball, and mainly I think it's because of just how each character played differently and had different roles. So I didn't have to be in a multiplayer shooter match where I had to be killing and had to be really good at what I was doing. I could help the guy who was killing everybody, make sure he stayed alive, which really appealed to me. And I could also switch to a quick gun where I can get off a few surprise kills, and actually got okay at the game. Not great or anything, but okay. And I just had a lot of fun with it. I really did.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually going through that same experience now. Like, it's become it's gotten more and more on my radar more recently, and so many friends and fans actually both want me to get Overwatch so I can just start playing it, because they swear to me that this is the first-person shooter for people who don't like or are not good at first-person shooters, because there's so many characters who don't necessarily play like your typical first-person shooter characters. So yeah, I mean, I really want to play it. Plus, for me, I think for both of us, but I'm so excited and happy about the big diversity angle that Blizzard has been taking with this roster of playable characters in Overwatch. I mean, there's so much diversity on display. Not only human and animal, but different skin tones, different nationalities, genders. It's so cool to see Blizzard going all in on having a truly diverse character roster in a genre, by the way, that is really known for not having diversity. So that's one reason right there that I really want to play it. But yeah, I love the cartoony art style, the bright colors. I feel like a lot of Overwatch goes directly or runs directly counter to what people associate with FPSs, and that's what's really cool about it.
And I think that's what got people so interested in it, because like Splatoon, it's a very different kind of shooter. It's colorful, it's fun. It doesn't take itself entirely seriously. And more so in Overwatch's case, they have this, even kind of in Splatoon's case as well, there's this kind of interesting backstory involved. And I think you'll encounter this myself, or at least if you look out into any of these characters, you'll be like, man, I wish I had a single player element so I could actually see more of these characters, see what they're all about, and get more of them, because you get that from those animated movies and the comics and everything else that they're doing that flesh out the characters. But I want to play those moments and see what they're all about. So maybe we'll get that from the sequel. I don't know if it'll stay completely multiplayer or not, but even just as a multiplayer game, it's a lot of fun.
Sure.
So that was a very nice surprise for me this year. If I had played it more, it might have made my top 3 of the year, but I just didn't get the time to dedicate, which is why single-player games typically win out for me.
No, I hear you. But although while we're on the subject of shooters, I feel like I should probably bring up Deus Ex Mankind Divided, because this is a game that I think you didn't play, right, Derek?
No,
I did?
Yeah, I've not played.
Well, I just want to mention it only because I've mentioned before about how Deus Ex Human Revolution, even though it marries like my two least favorite things in gaming, which is like FPSs and stealth, I still love that game because of its incredibly compelling world and story, and Adam Jensen's a really compelling protagonist. So I was really excited for Mankind Divided, and it's yet another game that I just had to stop playing because actually World of Final Fantasy came out, and I haven't been able to go back to it. But, you know, I think Mankind Divided's weird. I feel like there was so much hype for the game right before it came out, and then the hype just died very quickly. And I think that's partially because Mankind Divided ended up being a bit more of a by the numbers sequel than people were expecting. Like, I feel it's almost like the Last Guardian scenario, where obviously Mankind Divided wasn't in development for anywhere near that long, but for the 4 or 5 years that it was in development, I think Human Revolution came out in 2011, so 5 years. You know, game design moved ahead a little bit, and that's not saying that Mankind Divided's world design isn't amazing, because it is, and the fact that every objective has so many ways you can tackle it, it really does truly feel like this is a game you can play however you want to. At the same time, though, some of the controls felt a little stiff, the graphics didn't quite feel like they were the jump I think people were expecting, so in a lot of ways, Mankind Divided was a bit by the numbers, but it's still really good, and I feel like the hype died a little too quickly for that game, because what's there is actually a great game.
I can see that. It would makes complete sense to me. It's one of those games eventually I'll get to.
I know.
And I got to play the first one, of course, and all that. But
add it to the list.
Yeah, throw it on the pile.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, a game that I definitely missed out on, and I think you did as well, but I still want to mention it because Mirror's Edge Catalyst came out this year. And I played the original, enjoyed the original for what it was. It wasn't my favorite or anything, but I rented it, played it, and I was like, that was kind of cool. And people were clamoring for a sequel for a long time. And now Catalyst came out, and again, I feel that's another example of a game that just disappeared. Yeah,
you know, there was so much hype considering or surrounding Catalyst when it came out, and I guess it just wasn't what people wanted. Yeah. It wasn't a sequel; it was a reboot. And it seemed to make things, at least from what I heard, it made things a little grittier, grittier, darker, grittier, edgier, and maybe that's not what people were looking for from Mirror's Edge. So I played the demo of it, and I was actually pretty enthusiastic about what I played, so I don't know where the problems lie, but it definitely was not something that was well received.
Mm-hmm. And I think, I'm not sure on this one, but I think it was also kind of open world as well.
Okay, I did hear that.
Which is kind of very much different, because usually it's like, here's this path ahead of you, like, and there's kind of multiple paths that you can take, but traverse this path, and that was the challenge.
Right.
I don't know if that's still in Catalyst, but it's you know, it's sad when you finally get a sequel and doesn't quite meet the expectations you have for it.
Yeah, I mean, especially because this was something that people have been waiting so long for, and I do wonder if this is one of those things where there actually is a good game buried underneath here, because I have seen people say, oh no, I really like Catalyst, people slept on it too much. So I have a feeling that there's, you know, some good stuff here buried away, but maybe that it's just kind of layered underneath all this open world stuff and maybe some other stuff about the game people didn't like.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of sequels, you played one this year that I think you enjoyed. I'm not sure if you enjoyed it as much as the original, but Azure Striker Gunvolt 2.
I mean, it's hard to say. I guess I liked it about as much as the original. I mean, it's really hard to quantify both. They're about as good as each other. I would say they're good in different ways. Like, Gunvolt 1 has a longer central campaign because there's only one character to play as. Gunvolt 2 tries to kind of split the same length of game between two characters, and I think to varying degrees of success. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, as a platformer, it's still great. I mean, Gunvolt 2 is stylish, it looks great, it's a lot of fun to play. It's super hardcore in terms of the difficulty. I mean, it might be easier to get through the game itself, but in terms of setting high scores and things like that, I would say it's a little harder. And then there's the addition of the new playable character, Copen, who, I mean, oh man, it's so hard. I wanted to love Copen because he adds a whole new style of gameplay to the game that's completely different from Gunvolt. At the same time, I still felt that Gunvolt was more fun to play as, and also Copen as a character was such a dick. I mean, he really was completely insufferable. And, I mean, he's basically like a crazy religious zealot who goes around, killing people because he thinks it's the right thing to do. And it's like, I don't want to play someone like this. He's a jerk. Like, he really is. And I'm like, okay, so there's this whole second half of the game, which I guess is supposed to appeal to me as much as the other half, but it doesn't. So it's hard to say that Gunvolt 2 was worse, but it definitely was different, and I think it was, that led to varying degrees of success. Mm-hmm. But I think Inti Creates has already said that they're excited to work on Gunvolt 3, and I'm all about it. Like, I want to see that series continue. I enjoyed it. Like, yeah, bring it on.
Nice. It was actually a pretty good year for the smaller games, because just looking through our list here, we had, we'll just go ahead and quickly touch on some of these. We had Abzu, which you really enjoyed.
Yeah, actually, I did want to touch on Abzu really quickly. If you enjoy Journey at all, like, go play Abzu. It's like Journey, but underwater. It is literally like the ocean sea version of Journey, and you should go play it if you like Journey at all. And the graphics, oh my god, like, go play Abzu if you like Journey at all, please.
And just as much, I think you definitely enjoyed Res Infinite.
Yes, which I'm still playing. I mean, Res is one of those games I can go back and play forever, just because it's all about setting high scores, and it's so easy to get into the synesthetic groove of that game. I mean, it's just, the colors are beautiful, and the new Area X, which really makes me want Mizuguchi, or Tetsuya Mizuguchi, the creator of Res. He needs to make a new game. I don't know if you've seen Area X at all, Derek, but... Oh, I haven't played it in PlayStation VR yet. I demoed Res Infinite, obviously at E3 in PSVR, but Area X is what I really need to see in VR. Like, it's so cool, Derek.
Nice. Another one that neither of us had a chance to play, but, definitely caught our attention was I Am Setsuna.
Oh, man, I so wanted to play this game, and I still see it it's on sale right now on PlayStation Network for $27 if you're a PlayStation Plus member, and I'm so tempted to go get it. But I'm like, I look at the other RPGs I already still have to play, and I'm like, I can't play it right now, but it's based on Chrono Trigger, my favorite game of all time. How can I not want to play this? Mm-hmm. But to be fair, I have heard from a lot of people who have played it that while the battle system is inspired by Chrono Trigger, it has absolutely none of that game's charm or just general kind of lasting power.
From the people who did play it, I have heard the game is okay, pretty good in places. Yeah. Where you could definitely see it's more of a budget title. The characters aren't quite get as invested as them get as invested into them as you do with like Chrono Trigger, obviously, and whatnot. But still, it's one of those games that's like, I like that Square Enix decided to put out a smaller game on PS4 that's just digital download.
Yeah, I like that they're funding these smaller RPG projects as well. I mean, I feel like I Am Setsuna is the kind of game that could really be fleshed out into a much better sequel, and a much more fully realized sequel. And, hey, just the fact that Square is spending money and greenlighting games based on Chrono Trigger at all makes me happy, because it tells me that they remember Chrono Trigger. They remember that it's something that people love. So you never know. Maybe this could lead to something even bigger.
Oh, don't get your hopes up.
I know, but you can't a guy has to dream.
Well, another game that finally came out this year was Shantae HalfGenie Hero. And I want to start on, we got two Kickstarter games, at least that I backed, that came out this year. I want to start with the good one.
Yeah.
And Shantae, I really enjoyed HalfGenie Hero. It's, I think it's an excellent sequel. A lot of people are debating whether Pirate's Curse or this is better. And it really is up in the air based on the style of gameplay you like.
It's hard to say, because I'm playing HalfGenie Hero right now, and I'm loving it. Mm-hmm. I mean, can I just mention or talk about how much I love Shantae in general?
Oh, yeah.
I feel like this is a series that really needs to exist and continue, because I just love how it's positive, it's fun, it's bright, it's silly. It's what platformers were in the 90s, and what I think they still need to be. And Shantae absolutely nails that kind of 90s mascot goofy vibe, and it's just so fun. It has so much fun with itself. Mm-hmm. And I'm playing through it right now, and I have to say, I think I might be one of those people that prefers the gameplay structure of Pirate's Curse more, that kind of more open-ended Metroidvania style. But I'm not against the stage, the stage division in HalfGenie Hero. I just feel like it leads to a lot more forced backtracking than Pirate's Curse had. So I feel like I'm playing through these same stages to find new stuff over and over again, but there aren't that many stages to begin with, at least not where I'm at. So it just feels like I'm repeating a little more than I'm used to
in
a Shantae game. But I'm still really liking it.
Yeah, and they have that teleportation dance, which definitely helps a lot with that kind of backtracking and searching and everything else like that. It's sort of weird, like you were going island to island in Pirate's Curse, but you're going stage to stage in this one, but they are structured just a little bit differently. And I don't know if it'll ever go back to being a full-on Metroidvania like the first two games. That'll be interesting to see, but I like what they're coming out. I like what they're doing. I like what they did, and I'm curious how it's going to evolve further. And I'm also really excited for the gameplay. You know, we still have a bunch of DLC coming for it, so this game is not even done yet. It's sort of like we're now in a Shovel Knight situation with Shantae.
Well, and I will say that I do feel like that the game's nature as a Kickstarter-funded game does make the story, or at least to me, has made the story feel a little more, I guess,
episodic.
Patchwork. Episodic, yeah. Mm-hmm. It definitely feels like the different things you're doing don't really have a whole lot of connection to one another, other than to build this device for Shantae's uncle. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it definitely feels like a more patchwork story, and I don't love how they... I guess it's not a soft reboot, because it's not really a reboot. It is a sequel, and I think they say it takes place after Pirate's Curse, but it feels like a soft reboot because they don't really mention or kind of talk about anything that happened before this. So I kind of wish it felt less like a reboot, but I know what they're going for. Mm-hmm.
Just a way to people jump in right away. Well,
exactly.
Completely forgetting all this stuff before, because all the characters are there and they, make sense. And there is the reference to the cook and her dog from
that's true too,
from Risky's Revenge. There's those aspects. So, if you're familiar with the Kickstarter, you can totally see why it's structured that way, because you got these chapters, which essentially are different levels, by them kickstarting enough money. So there was only a few at the beginning, and then as they reached each goal, they added another one in, which is probably why it's much more episodic in nature as far as a story. So it's one of those things you're back and forth on. But despite any small issues might have with Shantae, it is a million times better than Mighty Number 9.
Well, I mean, so is a root canal, if we're being honest.
That is very true.
I mean, Mighty Number 9, that game came out this year, and that was a thing that happened, and I didn't loathe it like you did. I actually found some merit to the game. I found some enjoyment, but there's no way I could ever rate it anything more than a meh, and I probably doesn't even deserve that. But yeah, you hated this game, and I'm just like, okay, well, it kind of sucked, but there's something here that could be salvaged into a much better game later down the road. But you didn't think there was any redeeming qualities, right?
No.
Yeah.
The thing is, you can go back to my stream that I did of this game. And you could see how I started out positive, looking at the positive aspect, and then getting towards going further and further, and just being like, this is awful. I'm not having fun. This is just misery trying to do all this, and the game is ugly. The gameplay is not fun. The dash, while potentially interesting, is gimped at every I still have nightmares of that car level where if you don't dash in just the right way into the road, you go in instant death, and you got to go back to the last
that's
checkpoint.
Funny that actually wasn't one of the levels that gave me much trouble. I'm trying to think. I would say I think it was Mighty Number 1's level, the fire level, that gave me some trouble
that dashing section at the end. That's stupid too, because that was just so poorly structured. And the whole the concept of hunting down in the government mansion and hunting down that one mighty number throughout the entire level is kind of cool, but then you get into the realize all right, wrap it up. This is getting boring. I'm doing the same thing over and over, and it's not that much of a challenge. And if I die, I have to start it all over again. And guess what? There's instant death all over. It's not fun. The story's not interesting. The characters are boring or just annoying to a major degree. I hate this game so much, and I don't even care that I did get the rest of my backer stuff. And I feel bad. I kind of feel bad for the people who got this for 3DS and Vita, chose those versions, and those versions have still not come out. But trust me, you're better off not playing it. Just kiss that money goodbye and move on.
Yeah, I mean, really, the kindest thing I can say about Mighty Number 9 is that there are flashes there where at least I was able to get into a nice groove where I was, like destabilizing and dashing through enemies in a cool groove, and I felt like I was doing it in a slick way and that I was playing the game well. And those brief moments of brilliance, I'm like, okay, this game's pretty fun. But they happen so rarely, and they're punctuated by so many other moments of disgust or frustration or just, general negativity, that those flashes of positivity are really kind of few and far between. So I can see some merit there, but yeah, I mean, ultimately I would say it was a pretty unfortunate experience and didn't quite turn out all that well. And I don't really know what happened with the story and the characters. Like, I feel like the game weirdly goes all in on really trying to make you care about Beck and Dr. White and Dr. Blackwell, and it's like it goes through the motions of Mega Man, and it walks and it talks like Mega Man, but it isn't Mega Man, and it doesn't even make inroads toward trying to be Mega Man. You know what I mean? Like, it wants to be, but it can't be. It's weird.
It's just not. That's purely what it is. Like, you can see where it might be, but it's like, oh, we're going to do a fun little twist on this that you don't expect. And it's like,
yeah.
No.
I can almost see Inafune, like, talking to me through the screen, like, hey, see, there's Call, that's Roll, right? And there's Dr. White, there's Dr. Light. You love these guys, right? It's just like Mega Man. And it's like, no, it's not quite. Nope, not feeling it. Sorry.
And how do you get the composer of the original Mega Man and not have a single memorable song? I couldn't tell you a single song from that game.
Yeah.
Other than the crappy rap song at the end.
Yeah, what happened there? Like, I remember I was sitting there watching the credits, and my wife is next to me, and that rap starts, and I'm like, what? We both looked at each other, and like, what were they thinking? Like, how much of that Kickstarter money went toward producing that? Mm-hmm. Because it was awful.
And hey, at least you didn't have to sit there for 4 hours waiting for the damn credits to go through recording that bit. Oh, God.
I actually just watched a video about, like, everything that happened with Mighty Number 9, just the post-mortem and the Kickstarter and what went wrong, and it's very interesting, and I would have given anything to be a fly in the wall for all these, just throughout Mighty Number 9's development. But what an interesting, sad, weird saga that turned out to be, huh?
It sucked.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. Red Ash didn't get funded, so I don't know. I guess they're still making that.
It kind of got funded thanks to the Chinese whatever thing that happened.
Right, and the anime got funded legitimately, so the anime's happening. But I don't even know what's next. For
I don't even care.
Unless
there's interest in it for me to cover it, I am not touching that game ever.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, I feel like Inafune really did kind of burn a lot of bridges here. I don't know if there's any going back from how much Mighty Number 9 soured people on concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're going to have to do a lot of work, and it's not going to come easy, I'll say that for sure. So,
yeah.
But I think that covers all the major games we played, unless there's anything else you wanted to mention quick, Ash.
Yes, actually, really quickly, I do want to talk about, actually, two things. I'm surprised you didn't mention this. Ratchet and Clank. I feel like we should give this
that one.
We should totally give this a few minutes, just because Ratchet and Clank is the definition of a kid's game done right in the modern era. Like, it's such a good kid's game, and it's a great all-ages game, really.
Yeah. No, it totally is. It took the fact that it was a movie tie-in, use that as an excuse to retell the original game while being a tie-in, and have like, hey, here's these old levels and they're back again just in super HD, and it looked so good. This is a gorgeous game. It played so well. It had those modern touches that made it feel different from the original, and it even did some of its own unique things. I don't think it doesn't surpass my favorite in the series, which is A Crack in Time, but it's still a dang good game, and I want more Ratchet and Clank games.
Me too. I mean, I've always been kind of like a Ratchet and Clank fan on the sidelines. Like, I love the games I've played, but I just never really got into the series as a whole. So prior to playing Ratchet and Clank, the reboot, the only one I had played was Tools of Destruction. Mm-hmm. And I loved it, but I'm like, I really need more context for this series. I need to get back into it. So that's why I picked up the reboot this year, and I was not expecting just how amazing it would be. Like, I had a feeling when I was filming you playing at E3 2014, I think it was, I had a feeling it was going to be great, but I was not prepared for just how good it is. And like, the arsenal you have, the weapons are so varied, and they're so fun to use consistently, and the pixelizer is like my favorite gun in anything ever, because it's so cool. It turns things into pixels. And like, the graphics, like that, like, I feel like Ratchet and Clank has that magical oh wow moment that you're like, okay, I'm playing Toy Story. Except it looks better than Toy Story. You know what I mean? But like it kind of gives you that sense that you're finally playing a Pixar film.
Yeah.
And it really does look that good. And I said this about Uncharted 4, but I have to mention it about this as well. I saw this on my parents' new 4K TV, and oh my god, like this game really is beautiful.
Yeah, no, it really is. And the funny thing is they have like they have cutscenes, and then they also have basically clips from the movie that they try to tie into stuff. And the clips from the movie look fine, but the cutscenes also, like for whatever reason, they even this is just my own like only real complaint about it. The cutscenes almost feel like they're less good than the gameplay.
I agree,
which is weird. I don't know how that happens.
Yeah, the cutscenes are a little uneven, and I think the fact that it's kind of like forced to tie in with the movie doesn't help it. No. I feel like the story can feel a little, I guess, random at times. Because all over the place, because they're trying to shoehorn these scenes from the movie into the game. So I wasn't a big fan of that, but I mean, once you get the stuff once you get around the stuff from the movie, I mean, there's really nothing to dislike here. There's nothing wrong with this game.
No, it's great, and I'd love to see Insomniac do more with these characters because I love them. I played all the like mainline Ratchet Clank games, not all the spin-offs, some of them, but I really do love this platforming series, and I'd love to see it continue. Just a good time. And
I really hope we see another Ratchet and Clank announcements pretty soon.
Mm-hmm. I hope so.
The only other game I wanted to mention really quickly was PacMan Championship Edition 2, because I talked about it a little bit in our Game of the Year discussion, but I just want to mention once again that this was a big foot-in-mouth moment for me, and when it came out, I did not like it. I said it sucks, it's nowhere near as good as the original or deluxe. I was wrong. It might actually even be the best in the series. Like, I don't know why I was so quick to judge this game. I guess because I was so much expecting it to be like the first one, and it isn't at all, and I think maybe it's a little overcomplicated for Pac-Man when you're first getting into it, but if you give it a chance and you and you understand, okay, maybe this is too complicated for what I think Pac-Man should be, but I'm going to give it a shot. And then once you start seeing how all the different mechanics work together and what what going for a high score looks like and what you have to refine and work on in your game, it's just so fun, and the components work together so well. And this is a game that I keep going back to months later, not just for the compelling gameplay, but I guess I'm already built to kind of like the audiovisual experience it offers, but it's very much like an electronic dance club type vibe where you have these really, this thumping music and this electronic music with these wildly synesthetic visuals, and I love it. Like it's exactly the kind of thing I'm happy that Pac-Man turned out to be.
Yeah, cool. I have nothing. Like you've talked about it so much, I really have nothing more to add.
It's just so good, but I know, it's hard if you haven't played it to have that context.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's great that you love it so much, and always nice to prove you wrong.
Right? Yeah, that's true.
Just as a little side thing for me, just a little quick mentions here and there. Dragon Quest Builders, already talked about that quite a bit, but it was a nice surprise to get into a Minecraft-like game. Just good time. Really nice to have Civilization 6 come out this year. Played it with friends. I like the updates to it. Not quite as fleshed out as Civ 5 was by the end of its lifespan, but that's what the expansions are for. So looking forward to those. And finally, getting remastered versions of both Valkyria Chronicles and Odin Sphere.
Oh, yes.
Love those games. Play these games. They are so good. And both of them do a lot. Like Valkyria Chronicles Remastered is essentially the PC version with all the DLC added in. So, there's a way for you to... It's not as exciting, but still, play this game if you haven't already. It is my favorite on the PS3, so...
Like, I wanted to play both of these. I didn't have time, of course, but I really, really, really want to play Odin Sphere Leaf Thrasher. I never got to play the original Odin Sphere, and I know that's crazy for someone like me because it's like a platformer RPG with these gorgeous 2D hand-drawn sprites, and I'm like, this game is exactly the kind of game I would love, and I played the demo, I adored it, it's just, again, we need like a 25th hour in the day or an 8th day in the week. There are too many great games coming out.
Yeah, and trust me, you'd love it. The story is fantastic. It gets really intense and interesting, and the remake it just improves upon the original in so many ways. It adds a lot of cool additions that help make it a little easier because the original one could get pretty tricky in how it played, and also just gets rid of a lot of the slowdown that the original had as well because it was just so intensive, and this one fixes that. So great games, great updates, well worth picking up if you're interested at all. Alright, I think that covers it for our non-Nintendo 2016 year in review about the games, but we still need to talk about the news stories, so come back for part 2 where we look at the major news from 2016. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, be sure to like us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain, and of course make sure to subscribe to GameXplain for more on third parties, PlayStation, and other things gaming too. Until next time, bye!